we have in the provincial government a by-election happening in Ontario, and it's because the leader of the NDP stepped down as the leader and then ran for mayor of Hamilton and won. So she's now the mayor of Hamilton, which means the seat that she occupied as a member of provincial parliament is up for grabs. So they're having a by-election. Now, I started to notice in the last few days a bunch of articles coming out talking about how she is anti-Semitic. Now, I haven't looked into this at all. I find the idea is what I feel like it's going to come down to is that she hung out with Palestinian groups, which is usually how this all sort of boils down. But I know the Toronto Sun has had a bit of a field day with this and has published a few articles. So I guess what I want to do is I want to read some of the Toronto Sun, sorry, not Star, articles, which are probably short because I'm guessing that they're by... I wasn't wrong, okay? I was going to guess that one of them was by Brian Lilley, and we are going to find out how anti-Semitic this candidate is. So, okay, so we're talking about someone named Sarah Jama. Sarah Jama is I believe I have met her before. She seemed nice when I met her, if I am recalling correctly. She has been an activist within, in Hamilton, but also within the NDP, so props to her for all of that. But now we're going to find out if she is anti-Semitic. So this is a Brian Lilley article. For those who don't remember or don't know, Brian Lilley was the co-creator of Rebel News, which is the main far-right network out of Canada. Although he left Rebel News right around when Charlottesville happened, and he left to go join the Andrew Scheer campaign at the time. So it's unclear whether he left because of the of the fact that Faith Goldy went on an anti-Semitic podcast, or if he left because he wanted to work on a political campaign for the Conservatives. NDP candidate's anti-Israel activism raises concerns in Hamilton Center. And again, I love the concern trolling with raises concerns, It just raises concerns. Is it anti-Semitic to call the existence of Israel into question or to attend rallies with chants like, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free"? I would have to say no to that question. Just right off the bat. Just no to that question. I mean, for one, the chant, not anti-Semitic. But two, I call into question the existence of Canada. You can call in or criticize the existence of any state that you want, in my opinion. If you criticize Israel by saying that you don't like Jewish people, then I would argue that you're being anti-Semitic. But if you think the state of Israel is bad, members of the Jewish community would say yes. Okay? Well, I'm glad that Brian Lilley, who left Rebel News while working with a bunch of anti-Semites like Gavin McInnes and Faith Goldy, I'm glad he is the arbiter of what is or is not anti-Semitic according to the Jewish community. Ontario's NDP is saying no and defending their candidate in Hamilton Centre. So yes, Merritt Stiles has come out in defense of Sarah, which I would say is good. A good thing to have happened. Is it anti-Semitic to show up to a thing where someone else is complaining about a country? I do love that that's the other implication, right? Because they haven't even said that she has said these things or that she endorses these statements. It's just that so far the allegations we have gotten are that she was present where these things were done. And that is levels of guilt by association that is silly. Sarah Jama is the NDP's candidate of choice to replace Andrea Horwath as the MPP for Hamilton Centre. There's a very good chance that Jama will soon be representing the NDP stronghold at Queen's Park, but some members of the Jewish community are concerned. They're concerned. They point to Jama's long association with groups that describe themselves as pro-Palestinian, but often have a message that targets Israel. I hate that it's a constant conflation with Israel and Jewishness. Because there are plenty of people who live in the state of Israel who would be considered their citizens who are not Jewish. That, I would say, there's a lot of Jewish people that don't like Israel either, right? That association stretches back years to her time at McMaster University, where she was associated with the group Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights. God forbid Palestinians have human rights. That sounds anti-Semitic. Brian Lilly's ex-colleague wrote a whole book that we're reviewing. If you sign up to our Patreon, we're reviewing it, where he criticizes big human rights. So conservatives don't like human rights because it means they actually have to do it. Treat people. They have to actually treat people with dignity. In May 2021, Jama took part in a 1,000-person protest in Hamilton and was arrested for violating the stay-at-home order in place during the time due to COVID regulations. She had previously been charged for participation in another protest, this one calling to defund the police during an earlier lockdown period. Okay, what does this have to do? I love like this doesn't even have to do with the anti-Semitic stuff. It's just like, here's an additional thing that we can smear her with, you know? Even though I read this and I'm like, I want this person to be an MPP. I hope that becoming an MPP doesn't water down what she stands for. That's my hope. Because I do know that the system tends to, you know, chew them up and spit them out. Considering the NDP's constant calls for stricter regulations and measures during COVID, that they would choose a candidate who violated COVID rules, including to protest against Israel, shows their feelings on COVID matters are selective. It's as if, I mean, we got a lot of this crap when it came to the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, which was the idea. It's like, oh, if COVID is such a problem, how dare you protest? Where it's like, protesting is one of those things where it's like, that was one thing where it was like, worth the risk, right? Because it was to deal with another societal problem, as opposed to the people who were violating rules to just go get a haircut, or because they really wanted to go to Walmart and were mad that they couldn't, or that they really wanted to yell in a barista's face without having to wear a mask and have the barista wear a mask. You know, it's like, it's that kind of shit, where it's like, I don't know, some things not like, just because for most things you would say the COVID lockdowns were a good idea. Of course there's exceptions. Of course. Just like one of the exceptions is going to the hospital if you are sick, you know? It's not like they're, oh, you're violating COVID rules by going to the hospital. You're sick, you know? A profile on JAMA by a group that tracks anti-Semitic... Oh, I should say too, before I move on to the next paragraph, if this is referring to the same protest that because I think he's referring, because he said 2021. So this sounds like when there was an increase in shelling of Gaza, when I think it was even like the AP building was hit. I mean, Israel shells Gaza so much now, I don't know if like that particular shelling had like a name or designation, because it has all just become like one long targeting of Gaza. But there was a particular increase in the shelling, and a lot of and it had to do with the Sheikh Jarrah stuff as well, and the people being displaced from their homes. And so what we did in London as an attempt to like avoid the kind of hypocrisy culling that Brian Lilly is doing here is we decided to have a car rally so that we were still socially distant. But even if we didn't do a car rally, I still would have participated in it. Because, you know, sometimes the world needs to voice its opposition to a moral harm that's happening, even if that means that, like, you're risking something else. A profile on JAMA by a group that tracks anti-Semitic activity lists many associations with the boycott, divest, and sanction movement that seeks to isolate Israel and with events for something dubbed Israeli Apartheid Week. It's this track record that has many in the Jewish community concerned. I love, like, we don't even get the group name. It's just a group, and all they do is track anti-Semitic activity. So therefore, we have to trust them, right? Just a group. They don't say it, but it's Canary Mission. What do we know about Canary Mission? Canary Mission documents individuals and organizations that promote hatred of the USA, Israel, and Jews on North American college campuses. Canary Mission investigates hatred across the entire political spectrum, including the far right, far left, and anti-Israel activists. Canary Mission is motivated by desire to combat the rise in anti-Semitism on college campuses. Okay. And they're against BDS. Okay, let me read that part actually. We pursue our mission by presenting the words and deeds of individuals and organizations that engage in anti-Semitism, racism, and bigotry on the far right, far left, and among the array of organizations that comprise the anti-Semitic boycott, divest, and sanctions movement. Now, why is BDS anti-Semitic? I mean, that's just an assumption there, and I happen to not think that they are. Canary Mission gathers content from publicly available sources. We aggregate this information into a concise and easily searchable format, providing free access to general public, blah, 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 blah. Jesus, I'm not going to watch this because this is going to be like this is like a Scientology level hate video. Like, this is just a student on a university campus. This is wild. I was almost expecting it to be B'nai B'rith, because they are usually the ones to run these hate campaigns. But even just, like, scanning, like, what do we got here? We got, like, one, looks like one article. What is this? And it looks like they're trying to link Nazis with, it looks like they're trying to link Nazis with Palestinians here, because you can clearly see a line differentiating the Palestinian activists from the Nazi. But, like, we do know that, like, the far-right anti-Semitism is way higher than any of this, like, far-left stuff. And I want to be perfectly clear. There can be people who are, like, ostensibly on the left who engage in anti-Semitism, especially on the topic of Israel. In my covering of things, I have stumbled upon a few of them, because they do exist. They're not good, and they should be disassociated from our movements, you know? And I think that that's fine to do. But a lot of these people are just critical of the state of Israel because of its treatment of the Palestinians. And that has nothing to do with Jews or Jewishness or any of that. Now, I have some issues with a Jewish state because I have issues with any kind of ethnic state. I think I'm a secular person. I think all states should be secular to some extent and should promote pluralism in their constitutions, not constitutions that preference one group over another group. And does that make me anti-Semitic? Because I want the same to be true for all non-Jewish states. I want them to treat Jewish people like equals. Because I want them to treat all of us like equals. It's very disturbing that the NDP would put her forward as a nominee, said Marty York, Director of Communications with B'nai B'rith. I knew they were coming up. It's you. Of course, they were going to be connected with this call of concern. The concern that they have. When JAMA and NDP leader Merit Stiles were asked several questions related to this, the party issued a statement defending their candidate. Sarah Jama is deeply connected to our Hamilton community and has always given her voice and her time to build a more just and equitable society. Sarah and the NDP condemn anti-Semitism, the statement said. Therein lies the question. Where does denunciation of Israel turn into anti-Semitism? I mean, the thing is, where does denunciation of Israel turn into anti-Semitism? When you specifically target Jewish people. I think I answered the question. PC Party obviously thinks Jama's views on Israel go too far, putting out their own statement pointing out the ongoing problem of the NDP attracting candidates denounced for holding anti-Semitic views. There were several in the 2018 election, and last winter, the party had to drop a candidate in Oshawa over past actions. I think they had to, the federal party had to drop a candidate out in Halifax that I agree did say some pretty anti-Semitic things. But then there has been times when the NDP has jettisoned candidates merely of being critical of Israel. Time and time again, the NDP leadership has turned a blind eye and excused this regrettable behavior. Only Marit Stiles can decide if she will allow anti-Semitism to continue to take root in the NDP, the PC party said. The Liberals did not respond to a request for comment because they are being destroyed by themselves. I added the last bit, but they're kind of being destroyed by themselves. They asked the Liberal, or they asked the Green MPP to be their leader recently. It would be easy to dismiss the comments from the PC party as politicking with a sensitive issue, but that would be unfair. Ms. Jama and the NDP say she is not anti-Semitic. The Jewish community has its doubts and concerns, and given the NDP track record, I don't blame them. And I will just say, 2 organizations that target Palestinian activists on campus is not evidence of the Jewish community having doubts and concerns. Those 2 groups are not representative of the Jewish community. The Ontario NDP continually attracts candidates and supporters who have a strange obsession with Israel, so much so that several Jewish members have publicly parted ways. Ms. Jama has said that she condemns anti-Semitism, and that is good, but given her past activism and the record of the Ontario NDP, it's understandable that any of us concerned with anti-Semitism, which should be all of us, might want to see a bit more proof. Now, I will remind you, Brian Lilley, the guy who wrote this article, this dude right here, he worked with people, Gavin McGuinness, Faith Goldy, who were openly anti-Semitic. Very much so. And he excused their anti-Semitism while working for them. Or working with them. In fact, being their boss. Until he left the org, when Faith Goldy went to Mask Off and went on a neo-Nazi podcast. I love that what we got in this article was that Sarah Jama was at a protest once. And this should be worrying to all of you, especially what we saw happen in the UK, where the media there went bonkers in trying to paint Jeremy Corbyn as an anti-Semite. And this is always done to left activists for showing their solidarity with Palestinians who are being shelled by Israel. Shelled, colonized, displaced, etc., etc. And we could see with the push of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that they're going to try to paint all of the left in Canada as anti-Semitic merely for showing solidarity with Palestinians. So we have to push back against this. We do. We can't let people who literally worked with anti-Semites of the more violent kind that engage in like actual terrorism against Jewish people, which happens from far-right extremists. And Brian Lilley helped cultivate it in this country and is now trying to say that because she went to a protest calling for Palestine to be free, that she's the anti-Semite. Wow, awful to see Ontario Liberal candidate weaponize false charges of anti-Semitism against a political opponent. The only claims made against Sarah Jama are related to her advocacy for Palestinian human rights. Who else will be thrown under the bus for political gain? Here is the clip. Okay, let's watch it. So is this... So I'm guessing this is the candidate running against her. Yes. Okay, so here it goes. It's being weaponized by the Liberals now. This is fun.
There is a problem when respectable organizations like B'nai B'rith are calling calling you out for some of these things that have been said, though, Sarah, and I wondered if there's an opportunity for you to go on further a bit, to apologize maybe to the Jewish people for some of the things that have been said.
I think we need to really clarify what you're asking. I think that, as I've said, I'm really against anti-Semitism in our communities, but I'm also for human rights, and that includes the rights of everybody, whether it's Black people in our communities, Indigenous people in our communities, and Palestinian people in our communities. I stand for human rights across the board, and I think that's very clear in the type of work that I've done as a community member.
We do need to represent both Palestinian and Jewish residents in this community. But I do think that saying some of the things that are kind of triggering and quite... kind
of triggering.
Offensive, really, that evoke genocide. These are some of the things that I have, this is what I have seen B'nai B'rith calling out, and I just wondered about clearing the air on that.
Invoke genocide.
Nothing has been called out in terms of things that I've said. Things that have been called out online were me standing up for Palestinian human rights, and that cannot be conflated with anti-Semitism.
Yeah, 100%. I support Sarah Jam in this. Jesus Christ. Like, it's so spineless. It's like she won't even lean, just full blown be like, you said genocidal rhetoric. And the thing is, she didn't. We read the article. We read the accusations. If anything, she's just being accused of being at a protest where there was a chant saying from the river to the sea, Palestine should be free. My God, the genocidal rhetoric that we just heard there. Oh no. What a disgrace. Liberals are so spineless. My God. And for what it's worth, I have been very vocal about my own activism within the provincial NDP and trying to push for Palestinian rights within the party and a respect for human rights for Palestinians. And the party has not always had our backs. And so the fact that Marit Stiles is standing up for Sarah Jama right now is at least, I don't know, I just want to say that I appreciate it. That doesn't mean I endorse everything. I don't know. Marit Stiles is new. Let's see where she goes. But I am very, at least, hopeful because she took the right stance here. And I hope that the people of Hamilton realize that if the vote's going to come down between these two, vote for Sarah Jama.